Hi, welcome back. Today I'm here to talk about my 40 most anticipated books of 2019. They are spread out through the year with a mix of ages and genres. I'm gonna go in publication date. There's a few of these that I have arcs of, but most of them I don't. These are all books that I'm really looking forward to getting to. Starting with January. On January 8th, there are actually 3 books coming out that I'm excited for, and I have arcs of 2 of them. The first one is In an Absent Dream by Seanan McGuire. This is book 4 in the Wayward Children series, which I have been loving. I've heard nothing but good things about this, and I really want to pick this up soon. I do have a signed arc, which is really exciting, and I have the final book pre-ordered because I am collecting these books and I love them. Also coming out on January 8th is another one with an arc that I really need to get to soon. This is Slayer by Kiersten White. It is a novelization of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I am so here for. I've been loving Kiersten White. Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein came out by her last fall, which I loved, and I love Buffy, so like what's not to like here? The other thing coming out on January 8th is actually a novella that's only coming out in ebook format, but I do have this pre-ordered for my Kindle. For all of the ones that I don't have physically, I will put a picture right here so you can see what it looks like for those that have covers. This one is Once Ghosted, Twice Shy by Alyssa Cole. It is a novella in the Reluctant Royals series, and this follows the story of Likotsi, who is a side character, and this one is going to be a female-female romance. I love her as a character, so I'm so here for it. Then on January 22nd, we have 3 more books coming out. Those seem to be good days for publication. First up is Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the follow-up to City of Brass, which was her Middle Eastern-inspired adult fantasy debut novel last year, which I loved. It was 5 stars and I really, really liked it, so I'm excited to see where the story goes in the follow-up. Another follow-up on the 22nd is Song of the Dead by Sarah Glenn Marsh. This is the sequel to Reign of the Fallen. It is a YA fantasy series involving necromancy, and we have a bisexual main character. I really loved Reign of the Fallen last year, and I'm looking forward to reading the next one pretty soon. And finally coming out on the 22nd is a compilation of short stories. This is Black Enough, Stories of Being Young and Black in America. This I'm really looking forward to. It was edited by E.B. Zaboy, who I really love, and some of the contributors include Danielle Clayton and Jason Reynolds, so I really want to pick this one up. Finally in January, there are 2 books coming out on the 29th. The first one is the highly anticipated King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. This is Nikolai's story, and I am so here for it because he's a fantastic character. The other book that may be a little bit underhyped coming out on the 29th is Ransacker by Emmy Laybourne. This is the sequel to Berserker, which came out last year. I really, really loved Berserker. It's like a stabby crossover between Vikings and Little House on the Prairie, which sounds weird but totally works, and I really, really like it. So the sequel is coming out on the 29th. Moving on to February, we've got 3 books coming out on the 5th. First one is The Last Life of Prince Alastor by Alexandra Bracken. This is the sequel to The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding, which I really, really liked. So I have an arc I need to get to, but this is one of the few middle grades that's on this list for me. Another anticipated read coming out February 5th is Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. And this was pitched to me as a Game of Thrones type book set in Africa, which sounds freaking awesome, so I'm definitely looking forward to this. Also, guys, the cover art is gorgeous. And finally, also coming out on February 5th is Lady Smoke by Laura Sebastian. This is the sequel to Ash Princess, which was her debut novel. It is a YA fantasy that's a little bit darker, and I really like the first one. I'm very excited to see where the next one goes. Then on February 12th is what might be my most anticipated book of the year, guys, and that is Blood Witch by Susan Dennard. This is the next book in the Witchlands series, which I love. It is definitely one of my favorite ongoing fantasy series. It's epic fantasy, and I see it as kind of a good crossover for people interested in getting from YA high fantasy into adult high fantasy. I just love it. I reread the entire series in 2018 and just loved it even more after my reread, so I'm very, very excited. Age 1 story in Blood Witch, it's gonna be amazing. Also coming out on February 12th is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pau Preto, which I have some beautiful cover art over here for it. It's really, really stunning. This is a debut novel and I'm really intrigued by it. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it involves Phoenix Riders and sisters. It is a YA fantasy and I'm super interested to give it a try. The last book for February is coming out on the 26th. This is the one that there has been a lot of buzz about and it sounds like it would be right up my alley, so I really want to try it out. I'm hoping it meets my expectations. This is Four Dead Queens by Astrid Schultz. It's another YA fantasy debut novel with a kingdom that's divided and four queens. It's supposed to have good diversity and intrigue, and I don't know, it just sounds really cool. So I am hoping that that one lives up to my expectations of it. Moving on to March. I don't have an exact date for it, but my first book on this list is one that I actually have already read an arc of. This is The Tesla Legacy by KK Perez. Under Christina Perez, she wrote Sweet Black Waves last year, which was one of my favorite books of the year, and I really love this as well. It's sort of a hybrid of urban fantasy and science fiction. It's very twisty, it's very, very bingeable, and I love it. I hope a lot of people pick it up. So this one's coming out sometime in March. Then on March 5th, we've got two releases that I'm super, super excited for. They are both sequels in series that I started last year. The first one is Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. We do not have a final cover for this one yet. I'll just kind of put a placeholder here. This is the follow-up to Children of Blood and Bone, epic YA fantasy inspired by West African mythology, and I loved it. So I'm super excited to see where the series goes in the sequel. Also coming out on March 5th is The Everlasting Rose by Danielle Clayton. This is the sequel to The Bells, which has been a little bit of a polarizing book and maybe hasn't gotten the hype I think it deserves, but I really like it. I like what she's doing with it. The world is really interesting and unique, and she's dealing with, I think, a lot of important issues about the way that we think about gender and beauty and our physical appearance, and also race in interesting ways. So super excited for the sequel to that one. Then on March 6th, we are getting volume 1 of The Steel Prince by V.E. Schwab. This is a graphic novel series that is a prequel to the Shades of Magic trilogy, which I finished reading in 2018. I'm really excited for this. I'm very, very curious to hear more about the backstory in here. This is going to be the first of 3 bind-ups that I think are all coming out in the year, so definitely look forward to all of those. And the last book coming out in March is on the 19th. This is The Return of the Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. This is the highly anticipated wrap-up to the Queen's Thief series, which I have been reading. At this point, I only have one more book to go before I am caught up, and then this will be the final book in the series, which people have been waiting for forever, so I'm really excited for that one. Moving on to April, I've got another 5 books to talk about. 3 of them are coming out on April 2nd. I do have an arc for one of these. This is The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. Sounds really awesome, and it was blurbed by Claire Legrand, who is one of my new favorite authors. It is a contemporary YA novel, but it's got paranormal elements to it, and it sounds like it's going to be really creepy. Claire Legrand says, fans of The Raven Boys and Stranger Things rejoice. This is your new obsession, so I'm definitely here for it. Also on the 2nd is one that I've been seeing a lot of buzz for lately. This is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan, and it does sound like it might be really good. This is a little bit more of a stabby YA fantasy. It's about 3 people getting together to try to assassinate a king, so very interested to see how that turns out. The cover is beautiful. Also being released on April 2nd is The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare. This is her adult spin-off series about Alec and Magnus, who, guys, Magnus is bae. I love him. So this is also set in the Shadowhunter world, but it is her first adult, I think it's adult or at least new adult spin-off series, so I'm very excited to read that one. She actually has 2 books coming out next year, and both of them are on the list, but the other one is coming out later in the year. Then on April 16th, we are getting the final book in the Nyxia triad. This is Nyxia Uprising by Scott Rankin. I have really been loving this. It is diverse YA sci-fi that's doing some really cool things. I would recommend it as an alternative to Red Rising for a younger audience, but it's fast-paced, it's got diverse characters, it's really well written, and it's dealing with a lot of important themes. Very excited to see how it wraps up. And then finally on April 30th, we have another romance novel that I'm very excited for. This is the next full book in the Reluctant Royals series by Alyssa Cole. It's called A Prince on Paper, and this one involves a fake romance trope. I have been loving this entire series, plus I just think the covers are stunning, so I already have this one pre-ordered. Moving on to May, there's another 5 books to talk about, guys. Seems like 5 is a good number per month, which seems like, that's reasonable. First up is one that we don't yet have a specific date for, just the month, but this is the sequel to Lifelike by Jay Kristoff. It's called Deviate. We do have a cover for it. I don't love the cover, so I'm kind of interested to see what the UK cover ends up looking like. However, I do really love the series, and I'm very excited. This is his YA sci-fi series. It deals with artificial intelligence. It is just brilliantly written. I loved Lifelike, so I will definitely be picking this one up. We've got 2 books coming out on May 7th. The first one is called With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Her debut novel in verse, The Poet X, came out last year and was a huge hit, and I loved it. This is her next book, and this one is again an Own Voices contemporary YA novel about a Afro-Latina character. In this one, she's really into cooking, and from the description, I'm thinking there might be some magical realism elements to it, which I'm really excited for. And then in another follow-up to a 2018 debut novel that I loved, we're getting something else from Marco Shiro. There's not a whole lot of information on this yet, and we don't have a cover, but the title is Each of Us a Desert. There is a brief description, but it really doesn't tell you much of anything about the plot, so I don't know, but I did love Anger is a Gift, and I'm excited to read whatever else he's writing. Then on May 14th, there is one that I am very, very excited for. This is called We Hunt the Flame. It is a debut YA fantasy novel inspired by ancient Arabia. It looks amazing, and the author, Hafsa Faisal, is the creator of Icy Designs. She makes like beautiful bookish enamel pins, she makes candles, and it's also kind of a big deal that she's publishing because she's a niqabi, which means that not only does she wear a hijab on her head, but she also covers her face, and so it's kind of cool that she's getting published. I'm really excited for this book. It looks beautiful, and I've been hearing a lot of buzz about it. And then the last book that we're getting in May is one that I'm very excited for because it is the sequel to one of my favorite books of 2018. This is Kingsbane by Claire Legrand, the follow-up to Furyborn, which is a epic YA slash new adult feminist fantasy novel. Another one that's been a little bit polarizing, but I was a huge fan, so I'm definitely excited for Kingsbane. I'm probably going to want to reread Furyborn before it comes out, so that's definitely on my radar. I don't have any books coming out in June to talk about, and in July I've only got 2 books, so it's going to be a little bit of quieter summer. The first book in July is coming out on the 9th, and this is the much anticipated Dark Age by Pierce Brown. It is the next book in the Red Rising saga. It was supposed to be published, I think, this fall, and it's gotten pushed back a couple of times, so fingers crossed we will actually get it in July. A lot of people are very excited about it. I do need to catch up and read Iron Gold before this comes out, but I think I have plenty of time. And the other book coming out in July that I'm excited for is on the 16th. This is called The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. He was the author of The Underground Railroad, which I read and loved. It is adult magical realism dealing with the time period of the Underground Railroad and pre-Civil War and post-Civil War, and it was like fantastic. And this book is kind of a follow-up in spirit. It takes place during the Jim Crow South and follows 2 boys who are sent to a brutal sort of re-education school. I loved Underground Railroad, and I'm very excited to read anything else by him, so I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Then in August, we've got 4 books coming out that I'm excited for. 3 of them are coming out on the 6th. The first one is The Near Witch by Victoria Schwab. This is a standalone fantasy that she's working on. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I just generally love her writing, and I know that she said that this is a more character-driven book. I do tend to like character-driven books, so I'm excited to pick this one up. I will say I don't love the US cover, so if I buy this one, I'm probably going to go for the UK cover. I will show you the 2 so you can see the difference. I'm just not the biggest fan of the US one, but the UK one is really beautiful. Also coming out on August 6th is Let's Call It a Doomsday by Katie Henry. Her debut novel came out in 2018, Heretics Anonymous, and again, it was like one of my favorite books that I read, definitely one of my favorite YA contemporary books that I read, and I'm very excited to read anything else by her. She does some really interesting thinking about religion, and yeah, this is another YA contemporary. I can't tell if it's going to have apocalyptic elements to it. It's about a girl who's got a premonition of doomsday coming, but it's unclear to me whether it's more about mental health or whether it's more about the apocalypse actually happening. I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm excited to read it. And then the final book coming out on August 6th is the sequel to Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. This one is called The Vow of Thieves. These are set in the same world as the Remnant Chronicles, which I've really been loving this year. I haven't read Dance of Thieves yet, but I plan to. I suspect I will love it, so I will probably be wanting to pick up the sequel as well. Finally, on August 27th, we are getting the sequel to Sweet Black Waves by Christina Perez. This one is called Wild Savage Stars. The cover is gorgeous, and this is another one that was like an underhyped debut novel that was one of my favorite books of the year. It is a dark, feminist, witchy retelling of Tristan and Isolde, and I'm super excited to see where this book goes. This one is kind of going to be getting away from the original story. In book one, we really got a retelling of Tristan and Isolde through the perspective of Branwen, Isolde's lady's maid. This book is kind of moving their stories forward, but outside of the original story. And she's doing a lot with themes of sisterhood and identity and female power, which I'm all about, so I'm really excited to read the sequel. Okay, we are winding down, guys. Not too many more left. Obviously, there will be more things probably added to this list next year, but at least with what we know about it right now, these are my most anticipated books. In September, I've got 3 books to talk about. 2 of them are coming out on September 3rd. The first one is Dark Dawn by Jay Kristoff. This is the final book in the Nevernight Chronicles, which I am very excited for. This is, like, again, Jay Kristoff has 2 books on this list for 2019. I have been loving his writing. I think it's brilliant. The Nevernight Chronicles is adult fantasy. It is definitely fairly brutal and does have some explicit content in it, so you know, reader be warned, but I love it. I think his writing is brilliant. Also coming out on the 3rd is Red Skies Falling by Alex London. This is the sequel to Black Wings Beating, which I loved. It is a YA fantasy series with Own Voice's gay representation in it. It's about a brother and sister who come from an abusive family, and it's set in a really unique world where birds and falconry form the basis of society, and there's a lot of political stuff going on. There's just a lot. It's really good. So I'm gonna probably again want to reread this one before the sequel comes out, but yeah, very excited to see where that goes. And the last book coming out in September is on the 17th. This one we also don't yet have a cover for and don't have any information about, but we know it's coming and I'm excited for it. It's called The Widow of Pale Harbor by Hester Fox. This is adult historical fiction. I read her debut novel this last year, The Witch at Willow Hall, and I loved it. It was so good. One of the best historical fiction books that I read in 2018, and I'm gonna want to probably read anything else that she writes, so I don't know what this is going to be about, but I'm sure it's going to be great. I don't have any books in October at this point, and then one book in November. On the 19th, Cassandra Clare's Chain of Gold is coming out, and this is the first in her Wicked Powers series. It's another YA series in the Shadowhunter world. I've been a longtime fan of her books, so I'll probably read pretty much whatever she decides to put out in this world. So also, we did get a cover recently, and it is gorgeous. The only other book on this list is one that we don't have a date yet for, but it's supposed to be coming out sometime in 2019. This is Crescent City, the first book in Sarah J. Maas's new adult romance series. This is going to be adult romance that's a blend of sci-fi and fantasy. I've heard her talk a little bit about it, and it sounds awesome. I like her for romance. I'm definitely anticipating that one. So there you go. Those are all 40 of my most anticipated books for 2019. There are definitely other books coming out that I will probably pick up, but they're ones that I'm less excited about than these. I know a lot of people are probably going to have The Wicked King on their list, which I'm excited for. I'm sure I'm going to read it. It just didn't quite make the cut for this list. So talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know if you are excited for any of these, if there are things on your list that got left off of mine. And question of the day, what is your most anticipated book for 2019? Let me know what you guys think. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.